Take a break from your busy schedule and join Harold Sala for Guidelines, a 5-minute commentary on living.
After Mark Twain, the American humorist, returned from a world cruise, he told of his experiences meeting some of the world's great. His son, then a little boy, listened rapturously and then exclaimed, "You know, Dad, you must know about everybody except God." It's the exception clause that makes the rest meaningless. Which really is more important, knowing the greats of society or a humble knowledge of the Almighty? Now, just a minute, you may be thinking, are the two necessarily contradictory? No, but the fact remains that a real knowledge of God is something which you don't gain through good social connections or by hobnobbing with the shakers and movers of society. Knowing about everybody except God doesn't cut much ice when the line begins to go flat on your heart monitor as you lie beneath the cold sheets of a hospital bed. It's at that point that your social relationships are not terribly meaningful, along with how meaningless is the amount of cash you have on reserve or how many stocks and bonds you have in your account or in the bank. Knowing God is not a religious exercise, but a personal relationship, one that makes all of life different and yes, meaningful. Paul, who had studied as a rabbi, had an encounter with God on the road to Damascus. Humbled, he got up off his knees a changed person. From that point on, everything which he had previously considered important was no longer meaningful. "But whatever was to my profit, I now consider loss for the sake of Christ," he wrote to the Philippians. This included his family connections, his professional network, his years of experience, carving a reputation for himself, even his educational achievements. In this passage where Paul talked about the difference between profit and loss, he says that he developed 3 goals, 3 great desires. The first was to know Christ. The second, to know the power of his resurrection. And finally, the fellowship of his sufferings. Whoa, just a minute, you may be saying to yourself. If Paul didn't know Christ, then who could? Certainly that would leave me out. Well, before you despair, let me assure you that Paul did know him. For years he had preached Christ to others. But what does he mean? He is saying, I want to know him more deeply, more intimately, more completely. I want to go beyond where I am right now in an ongoing, developing relationship. Can you relate to that? Chances are what Paul said well expresses the desire deep down in your heart. A closing thought. A person can know a very great deal about Christ, about God for that matter, without knowing either personally or intimately. Many people know certain facts about Christ. They're religious, all right. They know the songs, the liturgy, even the language. But lacking is a personal relationship. Are you one of them? Well, don't be content personally with less than a full, complete personal knowledge of Christ, who said, "Come to me, all ye who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest." Is the desire of your heart to really know God? Then pursue that goal. No, it isn't necessary to go to a convent or a monastery, but it is necessary to come to the Father through His Son, to learn of Him through the pages of His Word, and to live out the inward love of God so that He touches others through you. The Jesus that you grew up with, the one that you heard about in religious education, may well be different from the one revealed in the New Testament. Knowing everybody but God, as did Mark Twain, falls short of the most important friendship of all.
You've just heard Dr. Harold Sala with Guidelines, a 5-minute commentary on living. If you would like to listen to the program again, download a copy, subscribe to our e-commentary, or view other resources, visit guidelines.org. We would like to hear from you too. You can email us at info@guidelines.org. That's info@guidelines.org. Thanks for listening, and we invite you to join us again for the next edition of Guidelines.